Welcome to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint from Zero to Hero, Module 3.3, Deploying AV Settings via Grow Policy. Initially on this video, I want to share some thoughts to help you to decide what's the best Grow Policy approach to deploy the MDE settings. And then I need to explore how to deal with the templates. Eventually, if you are trying to replicate what I'm doing here on your domain controller and you can't see the proper MDE settings, and then it means the templates are missing. I will show how you can fix that. And then how to explore all the key Grow Policy settings for MDE. And then finally, how to check the configuration, to check if the configuration has been deployed successfully. Anyway, stick with me and let's dive into it. When it comes to the Grow Policy approach, I want to introduce two different ideas. The first one is in here. Let's say I have all of my servers into a single OU. My lab I'm calling Corp servers. And then I would start with MDE general settings. Of course, the name can be anything. In my case, I decided to stick with MDE general settings. And then as the name suggests in here, I'm pushing all the key settings like when and how the devices should get the latest AV updates, when and how they should run a scan, if I'm talking about a quick daily scan, or I'm talking about a full scan every Saturday or every Sunday and so on. All those settings are configured in here. And then I need to move to the next phase where I have a couple of settings not applicable for all the servers on my environment. For example, the MDE SQL Server exclusions. In order to not overkill the CPU when some heavy databases are running, as the best practice, what we need to do is to exclude the SQL Server processes from the scan and from the verification. And then of course that would be applicable only for the servers running SQL Server. And then what I do, I have only those exclusions on these settings, and then I will add those SQL servers into a group, and then the group will be affected by this Grow Policy. Only servers that belong to that group. And then I would replicate the same thoughts for other additional applications, like Exchange Server, Oracle, and whatever the other applications you might have. And then the next one is to support the ASR, or the Attack Surface Reduction, and the unwanted application as well. But I have a better slide to explain that in 2 seconds. Okay, that will be the first approach. The second approach is if your organization, your domain, maybe there are some other OU, specifically where the servers belong to. In this case, the big advantage is by the time you assign, in my case, these MDE exchange exclusions into this specific OU, and then I don't need to go and do what we call filtering. I really don't need to go there and set the permissions to allow only a specific groups to take advantage from there. In this case, there is no right and wrong when it comes to the configuration. Basically, you need to analyze, you need to understand how the OUs are organized on your environment, where the servers are, and then basically take from there. If you are setting the Grow policies from a kind of, a higher level, you don't want to have every single server, as I said, to be affected by those settings that are not, really relevant. To fix this problem, there are a couple of steps to be taken. The first one is make sure before you start anything, you create a couple of Active Directory groups in order to support your deployment. In my case, I have a specific group for MDE exchange exclusions, another group for SQL Server, and then for general settings and so on. Okay, now let me dive into what would be my MDE exchange exclusions, or the exclusions for my Exchange installation. In order to do that, what I need to do is just expand the properties when it comes to this particular Grow policy. And then, very important, you need to do 2 things. The first one is make sure you remove from the permissions the authenticated users. Why? Because in this case, anybody or every server will be able to read the Grow policy from these MDE exchange exclusions and will be able to apply that policy into the local server. And I don't want to do that for servers that are not running Exchange Server. Then this is why I need to get rid of the authenticated user. And then the next step you need to do is make sure you click on add, and then of course here is the place where you add the group on my lab environment here called MDE Exchange Exclusions. And of course, as you can imagine, members of that particular group, they are exactly the Exchange servers I'm dealing here with the configuration. When I add the group, what you need to do, make sure you give the read allow permission, and you give as well the apply permission for that group. By the time you save this configuration, now only servers belonging to the MDE Exchange Exclusion group will be affected by the group policy I need. Okay, that will be the approach for you to follow to do the same when it comes to set the SQL Server exclusions. And if you are migrating, let's say, hundreds or thousands of servers, you don't need to apply the group policy for all the servers in a single shot. And then as part of your deployment, let's say every week you are about to deploy 10 or 50 servers. And then when you are prepping those 10 servers or 50 or whatever is the number to do the upcoming deployment, and then is the time where you would get those servers, add into the relevant groups to make sure they get the MD settings before you do the onboarding. Okay, that's an important important thought you should have. Okay, another group policy, again, it depends the way you are going to deploy your settings, but these two elements can be a little bit complicated, especially if you are deploying MDE for the very first time. Maybe you have been using Symantec or any other third-party tool on your environment. The first one is the ASR. The approach you could take in order to avoid anything that breaks, initially is here into my global settings, or I'm calling the MD general setting. I would enable the ASR and the unwanted application as audit mode. Why? Because I'm not too sure what is running on those servers, and I don't want those applications to be blocked straight away, because they could be kind of some old good applications, and I don't want them to be blocked straight away. And then the best practice from Microsoft would be to set it as audit, and then you have a couple of days or maybe a month to analyze what are the applications that would be blocked by the ASR and the unwanted application. And then after that, when you are kind of confident there is no good applications that are blocked by ASR or the unwanted application, and then what you can do is to get that server and add into my second policy, the MDE, ASR, and unwanted application settings in block mode. Okay, now we are kind of bringing the security level to a whole new level, and eventually if there is a bad application, the unwanted application and the ASR will block that straight away. Okay, that's one of the good approach you can take. Of course, if you are confident enough the applications running on those servers, they have been tested before and they are not, they never triggered anything bad, you could try straight away going into the block mode, but that could, give you a bit of headache, on your deployment. To be more cautious, I would say go to audit and then move to block as a second stage. Okay, the next one is you might have a bit of headache in terms of the templates, but it's not too complicated. What I want to say is the following. After watching this video, if you go into your domain controller and then start exploring the options, and if you can't find from the Grow Policy Editor, the Microsoft Defender antivirus, and then all the settings available from here, okay, the bad news means you don't have the ADMX template to support the configuration. How you can do that? There are a couple of steps to be taken. The first one, I will publish you can find the link to download those templates on the video description. Otherwise, you can do a quick search, just search for how to create and manage a central store for Grow Policy administrative templates in Windows. That's the first step. Go to that link, and then you need to download all the ADMX files, and you need to find one particular file, or actually two. The main one is the Windows Defender, Windows Defender.admx, and you need to find the Windows Defender ADML. Okay, this is the template itself, and this one here is the language. You need to get those two files and then copy into the central store. Okay, on my domain controller, because my domain name is jacksonfeldenlabs.com, and then the right place on my lab where I had to drop the files into the right folder is in here. C Windows, sysvol again, and then whatever is your domain, on my case, jacksonfeldenlabs.com, policies, policy definition. Okay, that's the right place for you to drop that file. Next time when you open your Grow Policy Editor, and then you will see all the options, available from that template. There is another template, not too important for now. Please make sure you watch my video when it comes to how to migrate from a third-party tool into Defender for Endpoint, is the ATP configuration ADMX. One of the important configuration from here is for you to have the options to force the server to run as a passive, and then when the time is right, when you remove the third-party antivirus, and then you want to force the Defender for Endpoint to be active. But I don't want to talk too much about that here. Please make sure you watch my video when it comes to how to migrate from a third-party tool. Okay, let me just quickly show run a quick demo to support this slide in here. Okay, let me just dive straight into my virtual machine, and here, oh yeah, there you go. Here is my domain controller, or sorry, before that, the website I was talking about. If you search for how to create and manage the central store, okay, here's the file, the ADMX templates you need to download. Okay, make sure you always go to the latest version. By the time I'm recording this video, this here looks to be the latest version. Okay, here it says for Windows 11 and 22, but it supports servers 2012, 2016, and so on. And then actually what I did, I've downloaded that file into my, domain controller. And then in here, let me just quickly show, okay, there are hundreds, okay, or at least dozens of files supporting multiple languages. If I search for Windows Defender ADMX, as you can see, okay, is in here. And if I search for the ADML, that's the language, as you can see, there are multiple languages. Because my domain controller is running in the English language, and then I need to make sure I get the ADML from the English US folder. Okay, what I did is I just copied those two files, the ADMX and the ADML, into this folder here, as I was saying to you a few seconds ago. Let me just do a bit of zoom in here. 1 second. Yeah, there you go. Okay, and that's the files into C, Windows, sysvol, Jackson, my domain, and so on. Anyway, and then here is the file, this one here, the Windows Defender for ADMX. And then if I dive into the language to support my deployment here, double click in here, yeah, there you go. As you can see, now I have my Windows Defender ADML available in here. Okay, when you have completed this procedure, now the next time you go into the Grow Policy Management, if I go to Server Management and then into the Grow Policy Management, click in here. Okay, there you go. As you can see, I have a couple of Grow policies already created. If I go now into right click and then edit, now I have the option here to navigate into policies and then into administrative templates. If I go there, as you can see, let me just zoom here again. As you can see, the administrative templates retrieves the files from my central store. Again, just double check if you are using central store on your server. And then the good news is now when I go here, I have all the settings I need available to be configured. Okay, now I'm back here to the server manager, And let me show now the steps for you to create a new grow policy from the scratch. Step number 1, just click again on Tools and then go over the grow policy management, click in there. And then of course here you will see all the grow policies already created and assigned to different OUs on your organization. Let's say in my case, I want to have a grow policy specifically created to affect my corp servers, and then it's very easy. Just right click on that one and then create a create a GPO on this domain and link to here. Click in there. Now, whatever the name you want, let's say I want to stick with the standard MDE general settings. I will set just number 1, just as a testing. Okay, and then click on OK. Now, as you can see, the grow policy is already in here. Eventually, as I was saying a few minutes ago, if you want to change the permissions, here is the place to go. If you click on delegation, and then as you can see, the authenticated users has read permissions. It means every single server into that corp servers will get this grow policy straight away. If you want, or if you need, just click on advanced, and then here is the place where I would remove the authenticated users. Click in there and then click on add, and then here I can now find my groups, and then I would say, oh yeah, I only want my servers that belong to the MDE general settings Active Directory group to be affected by this grow policy. Click in there, click OK. Now please make sure, just double check, you need to give read allow permissions, and you need to give apply permissions as well. Okay, click on OK on apply, and then click on OK. And yeah, there's a little message here just to remind you now only those servers or those users will be affected. Okay, I'm happy with that. Click on OK. Okay, from the permissions point of view, that's job done. Now the second step is where I dive into the settings and start, making whatever the configuration that's more suitable for my organization. Right click and then click on edit. And then here is the place, as I said before, I will go over policies. Let me just expand a little bit in here. Yeah, let me maximize. Okay, now over the administrative tools, and then the key location is Microsoft Defender Antivirus. And then as you can see, for a fresh new policy, everything comes as not configured, and now is the journey for you to understand exactly what each of these settings means. Initially, if you are a little bit, I wouldn't say lost, but if you are new into the business, every time when you double click in one of the policies, you can see here the explanation, what is that policy, about, and usually depends the grow policy. It says as well if that policy is disabled by default or enable, or sorry, if you don't enable, what's going to happen, what's the default configuration. That's the best way to say. Okay, that's fine. Now let me jump into the grow policy I already created and I already tested to give you some key information. Okay, let me close that. Okay, now let me run into the grow policy I already created and made some changes. The MDE general settings here. Right click, edit. Okay, and then let me explore some of the settings. Let me just maximize this a bit. Okay, same story, policy, administrative templates, and then Defender Antivirus. Okay, let me click in here. Okay, very important, especially if you have been migrating a third-party AV like Symantec or McAfee or any other provider into Defender for Endpoint. Please make sure before you start deploying Defender for Endpoint, check if this setting is not set as enable. Turn off Microsoft Defender Antivirus. I know some of the third party, when you install, they go and change this setting to enable. It means, of course, a third party tool, to avoid conflict, doesn't want the Defender to start, and then you can have a bit of headache. What you need to do is just make sure you set as a disable. It means, I could change it, sometimes a little bit tricky to understand, turn off Microsoft Defender Antivirus. If you set as enable, means yes, we are about to switch off Defender Defender service. In this case, if I set as disable, I'm doing the kind of, the opposite of this sentence. I don't want to turn off the Defender service. Okay, that's a good start. There are some other parameters here as well, and that's an important one. Randomize schedule task times, because, you know, imagine if you have, I don't know, let's say 500 servers, and then in a few minutes I will show how you can schedule a quick or a full scan. If I schedule a quick scan for 2 a.m., every single server under this policy at 2 a.m. we will start the quick scan. If you enable this setting, if I have a good memory, basically Microsoft will start the server in a kind of random way up to 30 minutes before the scheduled time and 30 minutes after the scheduled time. And then it could be from 1:30 up to 2:30, just to have a bit of kind of, you know, load balancing when it comes to the time the servers are running. Okay, that's a good one for you to enable. I'm not going to kind of explore every single setting. Please make sure you go over the options and adjust the configuration that kind of, you know, better reflect your security, let's say, need. Okay, from here, if I jump straight into the exclusions, that's a very important one. There are a couple of ways for me to skip a process or file extensions or a full path from the scan verification. I need to say it's never a good idea for you to add a full path, because, you know, any file into that folder won't be scanned anymore. But, you know, eventually, if you want and if you need, for my demo lab here, this is what I did. And then what you need to do, if you want to exclude a full path, just make sure you click on enable and then click on show. And then here is the place where you can set the folder. Let's say on my pretending story here, I'm migrating the devices from Symantec to MDE, and then I could exclude the full folder. Okay, that's one option. The second option, that would be the right one, is to exclude the processes. You know, I want to target a specific exe for the exclusions. If I click there, same story, I want to click on enable, and then click on show, and then here, same story, where I would add, you know, the full path, because I want to skip the verification in this file. Okay, that's it. Click on exit. Now, the next one, if I click on maps, important policy here you might consider is send file samples when further analysis is required. Double click in there, and the option here is the following. You need to enable and click on here. If you set as send all files, probably I don't need to explain, it means every single file Microsoft thinks a further analysis is needed will be sent to Microsoft. That could be a PDF file, could be an important Excel report, could be an important, I don't know, file, Word file, and so on. If you think that too much, you could set as send save samples. In this case, save samples are only related to kind of macro files, exe files, .com files, PowerShell, and so on. Okay, that depends the security level you want to cover, and depends the kind of the compliance from your organization, as well. Okay, if I go next, the next one, attack surface reduction. Okay, I have a video to talk about ASR. It's kind of, you know, can be a little bit complex, but anyway, just a tip of the iceberg. Please make sure you watch my other video where I explain in much greater details about the ASR. But anyway, if I go to the configured attack surface reduction, double click in here, and then I need to initially enable, and then click on show. Okay, now it's a bit of headache, because basically each of these ID represents one of those 16 ASR rules. You know, one of them is to block Adobe in creating child processes. Another rule is to block Office in creating child processes. Another one is to avoid the WMI commands and things like that. If you set as, I think it should be here somewhere, let me just, anyway, number 2, the value number 2 means block. Okay, if there is any, I don't know, Office trying to create a child domain, that will be blocked. If you want to start the journey, you could start as number 2, means audit. And then you deploy MDE with ASR in a block mode. You do the analysis, you check if no let's say, good applications, could be blocked. And then when you are comfortable, you could go and set as 1, okay? But again, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Please make sure you watch my other video where I cover the ASR in, let's say, greater details. Okay, and challenge number 1 is, of course, to find, there is a web page on Microsoft where you can find the exact ID for each of those roles. And here, number 1 is block, 2 is off, 0 is off, number 2 is audit. Okay, let me cancel on that. Now, the next one is the MP engine. That's interesting enough here. Select cloud protection level. Okay, double click. Again, here are different levels you can set. You could stick with the default, and depends your organization. You might want, to increase the security and maybe have some kind of good applications blocked. You could go to the moderate block level, high block, 0 tolerance, and so on. The good thing is you can create multiple grow policies assigned to multiple servers, and then eventually, start the proof of concept. Make sure you agree with the level, with the other people from the security team, and then you can, change. Okay, for me, I don't want to go too crazy, but don't want kind of the basic security. And then I'm sticking here with the moderate blocking. Okay, that's fine. And now, that's important as well, the quarantine. As if there are some applications that, MDE will block, here is the place where you can set for how long you want that application to be kept into the quarantine, to give you a chance to go there and eventually retrieve or kind of, download the application again if it's a good application. If you are in the early stage of the project, okay, I wouldn't advise to set as a 1 or 2 days, because that, wouldn't give you the chance for you to retrieve or to recover a good application. Maybe stick with, 2 weeks, 30 days could be a good one. And then as, you progress on your project and you can trust on the configuration you are deploying, that none of the good applications have been blocked, and then you could downgrade the dates. But anyway, I decided to stick here for 2 weeks, 2 full weeks, in order to give chance to the the people to retrieve a good application in case is enabled, is blocked. Sorry. When it comes to the real-time protection, of course, that's very important. I want to make sure the turn-on behavior monitor is enabled. I want to make sure the scan all downloaded files from the internet or from attachments, are fully enabled. And there are some other important settings here you should enable. But the behavior monitor, that's definitely is a good one. Okay, let's keep moving. If I jump now into the scan, again, a couple of good options here for you to go over. For example, allow users to pause a scan. Most likely, we don't want that. This is why I disabled. I want to make sure when the scan starts, nobody, working eventually from a server can stop the scan. If I'm deploying this configuration to an end user, Windows 10, Windows 11, same story. I really don't want the user to stop the scan, because that could compromise, compromise the security. There are some other configuration I can do. For example, specify the maximum depth to the scan when it comes to the archive files. Double click, how many levels. If you have files in archive mode, I decided to play safe and set it as a 20. Zip file, maybe there is a zip file. If you try to open, there is another zip file. If you try to open, there is another zip file, and so on. Some hackers could try to trick the system like that, and then 20 levels should be more than enough. Some other things here. If I want to scan archive files, of course, 100%, I want to do that. And here is the place as well where you can set, for example, the configured low CPU priority schedule scan. Double click, and then I can, I don't want the scan to overkill my, the CPU when running, and then I can configure some specific, details like that. That's going to be a little bit tricky. Scan network files. In another video, I was talking about that. Again, depends your organization, but usually what we do, we disable this option, because if I have 100 people or maybe 1,000 people with a map drive to a server, every day, lunchtime, maybe I will have 100 users or 1,000 users scanning the same location from a same server that could, overkill the CPU. Because any organization, we should have antivirus running on the server, and the server will have a daily scan as well. We could skip this configuration, this specific parameter in here. When it comes to the security intelligent updates, very important, here is the place where you set the frequency, when you want your devices to go to Microsoft and get the latest AV updates. Again, could be every 2 hours, could be 4 hours, depends your organization. Define the order of source for downloading the security intelligence. If I double click in there, it's the same from the Intune. Here's a place where I can set the configuration. In my case, I want first to get the security intelligence from my local server. In this case, could be the WSUS. And then if the WSUS is not available, and then as a second stage, I want my servers and devices to go out to the internet and retrieve the configuration from there. Another one is specify the interval, okay, when actually I want those devices to check for the updates. Again, I didn't want to go too crazy here, setting every hour, every 2 hours. I would advise anything between 4 hours, 6 hours, is good. Some companies, again, depends the amount of traffic that will create. Some other companies, sometimes they go for 12 hours, even, 24 hours. But beyond 24 hours, I wouldn't recommend. And there are other options here as well, where you can specify when the first check is done. For example, I want to start at 1 a.m. and then build the sequence every 4 hours. Or I want to start midnight and then, every 4 hours and so on. You can explore the configuration from here. And then eventually the last one is the threats. In this case, that can be an interesting one for you to explore. Again, especially if you are in the early stage of your project. Let me explain. Double click in here. What I'm talking about now is the specify threats alerts level at which default action should not be taken when detected. Okay, the story here is the following. I could click on enable and then set the following. What I want to do if a severe alert is created. And then the option is to ignore, terrible one I would say for this case, remove or quarantine that alert. What I want to do for high alert, medium alert, and so on, okay? To be honest, most of the times the default configuration works, is a good configuration, but the idea I can give you, if you are in the early stage on the project, maybe especially on servers, the servers that never had the MDE before, the company, let's say your team, could be a little bit stressful when MDE could block some good applications, especially if the exclusions, they were not done properly. And then to play safe, what you could do is to set a level of all of them as quarantine. Okay, that will give you the chance for the project, especially in the kind of proof of concept phase, to eventually retrieve anything that shouldn't be quarantined, that shouldn't be blocked, to go back and then enable the exclusions. Okay, if you want to do that, what you need to do is make sure to click on enable, click on show, and then here can be a little bit tricky. Okay, when it comes to the value name, actually is not that those names, low, medium, high, is the number. Okay, make sure you set as number 1, number 2, 3, 4, up to 5. And then I just give an idea. If I want to play really safe, I don't want any application to be deleted straight away, I'm playing safe, I'm setting as quarantine. That will give me time, to go back and review the configuration. After a while, and when I'm happy and I can see the MDE is not blocking kind of, anything good from my organization, and then I could, remove this setting or eventually set as a remove or remove, to block and remove straight away. Okay, just an idea. You need to find out what's the best configuration for your organization. Okay, click on OK, and that's pretty much it, what I wanted to explore. Please watch my video when it comes to the migrating from third-party tools to MDE. You might need, not you might, you will need, especially talk about servers, you will need to use this configuration here, turn on Windows Defender on AV passive mode. Okay, and I don't have this setting here. It means I want my MDE to be active straight away. But when you are doing a transition from a third-party AV to MDE, you will need to set as a passive, because you don't want two antivirus in active, fighting to each other and so on. But again, that's not the right video to talk about that. Anyway, I'm happy with my configuration. Now let me just close that. And okay, all good. Now let me jump into my other virtual machine to see if the configuration I have set, can be deployed successfully. Okay, let me minimize my domain controller. Now I have a second VM in here. Okay, this is my server that's supposed to be or will be affected by that setting. If you have been working with Grow Policy, probably you already know the GP update force. Okay, that's just a way, oops, I think there's a typo, yeah, force. Okay, GP update force. I just want to make sure now the latest configuration I have implemented can be deployed now here straight away, instead waiting from Microsoft that usually takes cycles up to 90 minutes to refresh the configuration. Okay, that's good. Now there are a couple of ways for me to check the configuration. One of them is from here. If I type get mp and then preference, okay, that's the command, get-mp preference. If I hit enter, yeah, now I could double check a couple of configuration with you. The first one is in here, signature failover, failback order. And then if you can remember from my Grow Policy, first I want the internal server to be checked and then eventually Microsoft. If I go to some other parameters in here, oh yeah, here are the two exclusions. I'm excluding a full path, full folder in here, and that is specific process in there. Another one as well, what I want to do in regards to the, in here, oh yeah, in regards to the ASR, here are the action. If you can remember, I've set the action as 1, that means block. And here actually are the 16 rules, okay, those 16 IDs in terms of, not allowing Office in creating a child domain, child processes and so on. Anyway, the whole configuration is in here. To be honest, when we are dealing with Grow Policy, a much friendlier interface is rsop.msc, okay? If you hit enter, now I can get a kind of, comprehensive report about all the Grow policies being affected this particular device. And that's as well you can use, especially if you are getting some conflicts between different Grow policies. Definitely this is the best tool. Okay, now what I need to do is just navigate into administrative templates, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and this is brilliant for two reasons. First, I can check if every single setting is enabled or disabled. That's good. And better than that, from where actually that setting is coming from. In this case, it's coming from my MDE general settings. Eventually, if you have multiple Grow policies, of course, we can set a priority between the Grow policies, but here is the ultimate report, because now I'm sure this setting has been set as disabled thanks to the MDE general settings Grow policy. Now, if I just go quickly, and yeah, let's explore again the attack surface reduction. And then if I go there, double click in here, and then click on show. Yeah, one more time, as you can see, all the rules are in here, all in block mode. And one more time, just to double check, this setting is coming specifically from my MDE general settings. If I go to the scan, same story. I could go now, specify maximum CPU utilization, specify, the priority. And again, I'm sure those settings are coming from the place I'm kind of, expecting. Anyway, that's pretty much what I want to show now from a kind of group policy implementation and from how you can double check from the client side. Can be a Windows 10, can be Server 2012, 2016, and so on. By the way, this is a Server 2016. Let me just double check. Yeah, this should be a Server 2016, but it's the same for other servers. Before I go, I want to just double check in here. As I was talking before, please, especially if you don't have a great experience on group policy, that can be a little bit dangerous if you go straight into the production environment. Make sure to review how to create and manage a central store. And as I told you a few minutes ago, you can download the templates if you need to inject into your domain controller. And here you can follow all the steps to do the implementation. Again, you know, what is the location? You should copy the templates, you know, to your domain controller and so on. Okay, just make sure you read the whole documentation, do a bit of, not a bit of lab, do some good lab to make sure you can get the expected results before implementing into the production. Anyway, this is what I wanted to share on deploying AV settings via group policy. If you enjoyed this video, please give a quick like, subscribe my channel, follow me on LinkedIn, and get ready for the next module. Thanks for watching.